Top. We on?
Yeah, we are live.
We're live. We're live. We're live. Okay. All right, we're live. We are live.
This is when I knew the race was not about me. It was about you and what we could do together. I'm Greg James.
Hey, good people.
To keep working for you.
Good evening. Good afternoon. Hey, y'all. Post and share.
That's right. Y'all go ahead on and tag and share.
That's your playlist singing in?
Yeah.
It sounds like a...
Alex Dixon, how are you, man? Go ahead on the tag and share. We're going to be talking to gubernatorial candidate Nikki Freed right here on, that's right, the Greg James Community Show. It's hosted today by none other than Christy Henry. So how are you today?
Look, we're working it out.
Working it out.
We are out here working it out. I was thinking the other day about, it was my husband and I's 19th wedding anniversary.
I saw that. Happy wedding anniversary.
Indeed.
It must have slipped y'all mind because it was posted kind of late.
It did post our mind because we had tenant sewage issues over in Frenchtown, over in back off of Macomb Street. So we had to focus on that and get people paid and take care of people. So
want to say good afternoon. Hey, listen, we want you to go ahead on and tune in, call everyone, those who can join us by way of Facebook. We got an amazing show. I'm here today with Conscious Check co-host and host Christy Henry. How are you?
Hey, we here. We working. We keep working.
Hey, and you know what? I just think the theme "working and keep working" is just something that has begun to resonate with folk now.
Well, the issue, Pastor, is that there's so much work to do, and I think if we really look at the change and the I was talking to a person the other week, and they were talking about just the role that local government and state government are going to play on human and social policy over the next couple of decades, because the federal government is shoring off those responsibilities almost regularly back to states. And what does that mean for our state government? It really puts a lot of importance and put a lot of impetus on who we have at the table representing the issues of the day in the next couple of decades. So I am really looking forward to continuing to watch and pray and work.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we do know is that we're in a moment in history whereby it's a moment that's really not like any other moment, because it's a moment whereby we're coming out of a pandemic, we're dealing with COVID. It's a moment where government is shifting, and it's an election cycle that has the making of a shift to our whole state, to our whole nation. And I think that it's so important that everyone who has the right to vote get out to vote, because their vote really matters. And there are a lot of people who feel and believe that my vote doesn't matter. Early voting is getting started this week. And there was a moment in time when, there were many who were without the voice to vote.
Right.
So we want to encourage everyone who can and will. Let's get out to vote, because your vote really matters. And how important is that, Christy?
What? It's everything. And, we're taking texts, and people are, texting and calling, and we're on this line and trying to make sure that folk can get on today. But it just shows you just how important formats like this and platforms like this are to make sure that the right information gets out there and that it's translated well, right? And because people are, unfortunately, because of I was thinking last night as I was doing research for our guest this morning, you think about Florida politics, and, it has an ugly, taste in a lot of people's mouths nationally because of the recount stuff from back in early 2000. I think we forget about the recount, and then we forget about some of the other things that have happened in state government, in local government, now dealing with a lot of the ethics reform and, a lot of that kind of spillage onto voter or juror, whether or not people feel like their vote matters. If we're
Right.
going to put people in place and we vote for people who say they're going to do A, B, C, D, and then they get up there and act a fool, right? And we, the taxpayers, bear the brunt of it by however means, then why do I need to vote? Where's the power of my vote? Is if I am continuing to see people get in office, and I'm not saying that's everybody. We have some dynamic leaders in our local community.
Absolutely.
But when you talk about ethical conduct and you think back to just the carryovers of all decisions that have been made, particularly for funded taxpayer funded resources, you have to make people understand that shouldn't keep you from the polls. That should make you go to the polls.
Absolutely. And I think that the more that we can awake the consciousness of voters, then the more we can stop sitting around talking about change, but then we can actually begin to see change. And so really and truly, the 13th that is approaching us Saturday, listen, don't let early voting catch you not voting.
That's right.
I mean, it's so important. And it's so important for so many reasons. I mean, facing what we're facing with all of the voter suppressions that's in place. I mean, when we look at our history, it's nothing new. I mean, we have always had to deal with obstacles. We've always had to deal with barriers when it came to voting. I just look at the work that we put in when it came to Amendment 4. If we would have listened to those who said it could not happen, if we would have stopped at some of the conversations that we had in offices where there were legislators who just did not feel or believe that we should even be given that right to vote, if we would have listened to that and not continue to press and could not continue to have conversations to empower and to uplift, then we would not have had Amendment 4 to pass. So we cannot negate the power of your voice nor the power of you going to the polls. So I just think that it's so important as we look at the 13th early voting start, that those of you who are listening to the broadcast today, we want you to, let's make a note in history that if you haven't voted in the last 4 years, if you haven't voted in the last 7 years, you're going to change that by getting up and making your way to the poll on the 13th for early voting. And there are some amazing candidates. And next week, we're going to kind of like give an opportunity for many of them to come and be a part of our show.
I'm going to do a roll call.
A roll call, because this is the community show.
That's right.
And we want to invite those candidates to come and give their elevator speech as to why the community, the district should be voting for them. And you and I was talking last evening about that, and I said to you, and you said to me, hey, your show has always been about community, whether you're running for office or not. You've always engaged the community, and why not continue to do what you're doing? So I really want to thank you for that, because I want to give all of those candidates who want to be a part of next week an opportunity to share their stories.
That's right. Well, I am encouraged, to be quite frank with you. First of all, that there's so many people running. It is hard on your life to have all your business out in the street seeking a political office. Many of these offices don't pay a huge deal of money.
Yeah.
You're looking at, 30,000-40,000 a year. That's Whataburger wages, basically. And God bless Whataburger. All right. But at the end of the day, people are doing it because they believe, because they care. And I think that it's encouraging to see people who are willing to do it. But I really want to ask you, and hopefully as we have some other friends that join us here shortly, what are some of the top local issues outside of, obviously, your race? What are some of the top local issues that you're hearing buzz? Because, we eat this stuff. This is what we grade.
Yeah,
What are some of the top issues that you hear coming from people, regular people, not the high up vote? What are some of the things that regular people are saying are some of the issues that they are concerned about?
Well, I think, when you take a look at what all of the races, I think one of the top things that everybody is talking about is basically how the economy has changed. And how do we bounce back? I mean, when you take a look at small businesses, the pandemic has really had a major impact, even though funding has been made available to some, but there have been so many who have had to shut their doors. So at the end of the day, people who were entrepreneurs, who had great visions, great hopes, great dreams now, their conversation is, how do I, re-energize? How do I, refuel? How do I get my business back going again? And I think that is so important as we look at all of the local races that are happening in the city and in the county. How does the county and the city play a major part in those businesses? Just 2 days ago, African American restaurant opened. Joe Ellen's
downtown.
And downtown.
Shout out Joe and Teresa.
Absolutely, an amazing leap of faith.
Yep.
And so if we as a community don't go in and support that business, then the struggle to survive is real. So businesses have to have incentives, especially when you look at where they are. I mean, the city got to figure out, how do we incentivize them so that they can continue to be thriving. I mean, I went there to eat the other day, and my parking was more than a meal. I'm just joking. But at the end of the day, it was after 6 and I still had to pay parking. And so we got to look at that. Yeah, we got to look at that.
Okay.
So
we got some folks on here that got some issues that they feel are some top issues as well. Pastor, I see Mr. Donnell Sterling. He's saying housing development, economic development, and crime reduction. See the big old words, right? Those are some big old words that a lot of people throw around. But let's break it down. What does that mean exactly when we say housing development, economic development, and crime reduction? What does that mean exactly, audience, folks, people? Let's start with housing development.
Yeah, what does that look like? For those of you who are online, what does that look like, housing development? I mean, if I was to ask you what it looked like, I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, the show will be over.
Don't
ask me about housing development. We got other people to interview. All right.
And let's let our audience know. Stay tuned. Our candidate for governor is joining us. She's getting prepared to join us. That's Nikki Freed. So stay tuned. Her schedule is extremely busy, but we're just holding till she gets here. But let's talk about that housing development. I mean, right now, I mean, at the end of the day, we know that there's a major housing issue that's happening at our university, FAMU, and it's so ironic that I found myself. I don't know whether God was testing me, or I don't know what was going on, but I met a young man maybe 2 days ago who master's student in the master's program at FAMU, and basically nowhere to stay. At one point, he was living on campus, and just within a matter of a few days, he was told he had to leave until they could straighten out the housing situation. And I was saying, when we were talking on the corner of Orange Avenue and South Monroe, I was saying, okay, God, are you testing me? Because we were talking, and I was telling him I was running for office, and he posed the question, well, what about housing? And I said, why would you ask that? And he told me his story. So I took it upon myself to, he's made sure that we got him in a hotel now. And he's working his way through Urban League. He's working his way through campus to get situated. And I hope they can hurry up and get that done by Friday, because, hotels are kind of expensive.
Yes, they are.
So what do you see when you talk about housing development?
So I'm gonna throw out a couple of really uncomfortable points.
Oh wow!
So that people can really understand what's going on with housing.
Okay, let's.
Okay, y'all ready? Okay.
Okay.
I hope y'all ready.
Let's.
I am. First of all, I am a student of the market, and so I understand housing from social and also economic and also opportunity perspective. Let's just say this. The housing crisis that FAMU or any university, because everybody, and this is not what's being said, everybody's experiencing a shortage of housing availability. It's not just a FAMU student problem, it's a all over Tallahassee problem. The problem is that the average median income within areas such as in the shadow of our great universities, all of them, make less than $50,000 a year. So if you look at $50,000 a year and you do the math, 30%, and I'm gonna do calculations while I talk. 30% of $50,000 is only, and I'm gonna do this for you so that, I did that wrong. 30% of 50,000 is only 15,000 a year. And if you divide that by 12, that's only $1,250 a month.
Wow.
So that means your housing expense, and that can include housing, that can include your utilities, that can include all the things associated with your housing. You got $1,250 to spend. Well, if the average 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home is renting at $1,400 a month, just rent.
Wow.
Okay, that's the housing crisis in Tallahassee. Okay. And keep in mind, we just came out of COVID. A lot of landlords have a love-hate relationship with long-term rental contracts. So you have seen a proliferation of short-term rentals, Airbnbs. And those are very expensive because they're what? Short-term.
Right.
And so that is where a great deal of the usually available housing inventory has gone into short-term availability. So that's the housing crunch in Tallahassee. It's an affordability issue. It's a access issue because the inventory is not available for long-term rental. And again, it's not just a FAMU problem. With the excitement of the redevelopment for the housing authority, they had to relocate their tenants and had to be extremely intentional about making sure they had somewhere to stay. And so I think as we move forward, and I see Nicole has joined us, Nicole Everett. We have to be mindful that there's not just one factor. There's a multiplicitous factors that lead to these crises and these outcomes. And we as a community have to deal with the low-hanging fruit first and the low-hanging solution and work our way up to addressing, because I haven't even thrown market-based homelessness in there yet.
Wow.
So I mean, it's a huge problem. But Mr. Starling, to your point, I think it's something that needs to be taken up seriously. And our city and county governments are taking them up. What their approaches are would depend on consensus. So you need to vote and make sure you have the right people in office that can deal with the problem in a way that meets the values of our community.
Wow. Well, listen, our voice of Tallahassee, our voice of the state has joined us, the Oprah.
Tallahassee Oprah.
Yeah, Nicole Everett, how are you?
I am doing well. Happy Wednesday. Hope you all are doing well. Also, listen, I attended the 32304 Summit 5 this morning. And boy, some of the numbers that they were talking about as it relates to poverty and inequities were quite interesting. So, definitely what you are talking about, Christique, about, your voice, your vote being your voice. And just being mindful of who you are voting for and their policies or their their practices aligning with what is important to you. So we definitely have to look at the affordable housing piece, the healthcare piece, the mental health piece, jobs and crime and all these sorts of things. So this is a great conversation to be involved with today.
Well, I mean, we're excited to have you as joining us, and certainly I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's one thing that I feel like is so valuable when we are able to unite our voices and we're able to bring all of our gifts to the table to help add value to the work that is being done. And Nicole, you have been taking time out to just interview and have conversations all over the place now. I mean, and it has been something that is much needed because our community must be informed. I'm gonna say it like this: they gotta be informed because it's only through the information that they're going to get the inspiration to do what they're doing. And so today, gubernatorial candidate Nikki Fried is going to be joining us. And how important is this?
Well, I think, Nicole, if you could just kind of spotlight, because you have been interviewing candidates as well. Started off our conversation in regards to what are the top hot issues that regular people are talking about? Because we know that we go to summits and they have priorities and conversations that they're discussing. But when you're talking to regular folk, what are the things that they're saying? What are the things that are, because when I talk to people, they don't say, ooh, poverty. They don't say that. Right. So they don't say economic development or community development. They don't say that. What's the regular people saying in the streets as you are having your conversations with the
So
coach?
I'll tell you, on the lives that I've been doing with the candidates specifically, some of the conversations that have come up have been around gun control. That's been like a hot topic. The mental health component has also been a very hot topic, and then housing. Like that, this housing crisis is just folks are at their wits' end. They don't know what they're going to do.
Mhm.
It's just out of reach. It is just out of reach. And so I would say I've done two candidate meet and greets, and I have several, a whole bunch scheduled for next week. But I have one tomorrow with Shelby Green, who's running for seat 5 city commission. So I know housing is something that is part of her platform. Utilities is part of her platform, and economic development. Those are like the three hot topics that she wants to put forward. So, yeah, no, Greg, we've got to, and I applaud you as well for the guests that you have on your show and putting these conversations before the community, because that's where it starts. It starts with the conversation. We want to know what's on the hearts and the minds of the people and see how we can come to some consensus and make some things happen. I heard someone say last night, movement is not the same thing as progress.
Mm, wow.
Movement is not the same thing as progress. So we need to be progressing
Mhm.
forward.
Yeah, and probably the problem is that progress is subjective.
Mhm.
You just have so many people that just, I mean, they have their opinions of what progress looks like. And then you have people that want to own the term progressive. But I think as we talk about these people issues, like Greg was saying earlier, when he talked to some regular folk on the streets, they're saying, I'm trying to figure out how to keep my business open. I'm trying to figure out how to find me somewhere to stay. I'm
Right.
trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to, do A, B, and C. So I think as we continue to have these conversations about the people level, it's really important that we stay there, because that's where the global determination, or the conceptual, the economic development, community development, we don't get there until we've curated, from the folks, their issues, their barriers, their accesses, and are able to move them forward under the conceptual into public policy, and therefore into funded initiatives that can address the issue. And it takes too goddamn long to do that.
It does. It's a task. It's not easy work, but it's gonna be worth it. We gotta do it.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So as we're preparing for our guest today, I want to kind of take a little turn a little bit, because we have a lot of women running for local office,
Mhm.
um, and that is something that's remarkable, because women, especially in the current climate, we tend to shy away from adversity. We tend to shy away from myths,
Mm-hmm.
and so to see the number of women that are out there putting themselves out there for candidacy, whether they're favored, whether they're ready, whether they're whatever, it's still remarkable to see. And I'd like to get some of y'all's input as we prepare to interview a woman who is seeking the top state office, leadership in the top state office. What are your thoughts about it? Are we excited? Are we ready? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm excited about it, and I think it's quite commendable. I think, as you have stated, women tend to not be as controversial. Although I have seen us in, some of the candidates that have their name in the ring and the hat come for some folks. So, or been well prepared to defend themselves as they have been kind of, I won't call it attacked, but some people have come after them. And so, no, I'm excited. I was thinking about that again before coming on here. Is Florida ready for a female governor? We've had others that have come before, and if you look at a Gwen Graham or a oh, I can't think of the woman who was over Nations Bank, but um, there have been others that have sought this seat, but I don't know. Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? What you think, uh, Pastor Greg?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I would say, Nicole, is that, and I was thinking about Alex Sink.
Alex Sink, that's who it was. Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking about her, and I was thinking about the fortitude that she had. I mean, the message. I mean, it was as though she was moving throughout the state, bringing people to the forefront, uniting people. And if ever there was a time, I thought that would have been the moment because it was such a close race. Now, when we look at it and when we look at the movement, we have to agree. I have to agree with the both of you all that it's a brave movement because of what goes into you making that decision to run for office. You really are opening yourself up to become attacked. You open yourself up for your families, your friends, and everyone. So, are we ready? I'm. Oh God, Nicole, why did you ask me that? Are we ready? Are we ready? I think we are ready. The question is, are we moving towards the voting polls to vote?
So that's another great question because I am sensing quite a bit of voter apathy. A number of folks that are expressing, it's no big deal. It's not going to make a difference. My vote, me getting out there, all of the politicians are the same. They just manage in the same system, you know. So, yeah.
We just talked about that earlier. We just talked about voter apathy earlier. When I talk to folk and try to get them keyed up about it, how much does the political negativity do you believe play into that? How much does the rancor play into that?
I think it plays a big part because, it's like you're voting for the lesser of the two evils, especially if the candidates are going at one another. Although I think it's almost as if they've fallen into this whole kind of sensationalism of, broadcast television, right? So, we had the onset of these reality TV shows, and there's a whole lot of negativity and drama that goes on, within those that type of programming. But it's almost that like they're mimicking some of that. You know what I'm saying? Now, mind you, you are, especially folks who are not the incumbent. You're saying, I don't think that they are doing the best job, or I can do a better job. There are some things that I think this, me being in this position, I can improve upon this. I get that. But some of this character kind of, going for the juggler type stuff, for some people it is very much so a turnoff. And it makes them not want to get involved in the election piece at all.
Yeah.
I mean, just speaking, from my own personal experience, just a few days and a few weeks that I found myself in this political ring, it has really caused me to pray even the more. It has really caused me to become more humble in my efforts of just going throughout the day. And it says a lot if you're really going to grow and develop. Looking at it from a spiritual standpoint, the greater the attacks that you encounter, then the greater the advancement your life becomes, regardless to what your outcome is, you grow. And I think that when we look at it, like you said, it's the incumbents who are having to deal with those who are opposing, and the constant attacks that I've been able to see in ads and things that have been coming forth on social media about people. Is it really necessary? Is it necessary? Is it when does it stop? I mean, will it ever stop? Some people sit on the sidelines and they're waiting for those moments, and there are others who are saying it don't take all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a season that comes once a year, and when it comes, everyone is
hide your women, hide your children. Indeed. I also think, adding to that, I think in terms of the African American community, and I can only speak from that angle. The absence of a clear agenda creates apathy. And so I think as we're looking forward, and I see our guest has come on. As we're looking forward, and hey, how you doing, Miss Nikki? All right.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, we are so glad to see you. We're just kind of closing out this segment where we're talking about just the reality of voter apathy, and how important it is to really have a local agenda that speaks to the need of people, and really moving conversation forward in that way to public policy and then for funding, implementation. And we weren't using all those big old words. We just were talking about it in general. So we are so glad to have you here. Welcome to the Greg James Community Show.
I am so excited to be here today in this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm not Greg James. He's right here. And we also have Nicole Everett of Conversations with Nicole, and also the Greater Works Network, here with us to join in this conversation. We're so excited to be interviewing a woman seeking leadership in the top office of the state of Florida. This is exciting times. And I'll read through some of your information as we were looking through your platform. And one thing I see over and over and over again is that you have a pretty good grasp of the things that concern regular folk. Could you speak a little bit to that as you talk about and you look forward to the race ahead, and how you engage people in real issues?
So I think that part of it comes back to the fact that I'm not a career politician. I am an attorney for almost 19 years. I did everything from being a past public defender for 3.5 years to fighting for homeowners during the foreclosure crisis, fighting for our foster care kids, fighting for public education, fighting for medical marijuana patients. And so I come from this from a different perspective, that I've been hearing the stories on the ground. I've been hearing from patients. I've been hearing from foster care kids. I've been hearing from, not only my clients when I was a PD, but their families, what was happening on the ground. And then, last 3.5 years as our commissioner, that's what I've been doing. I've been showing back up to our communities and listening to what's happening. And then before I even announced my campaign, we were going around, we called them the Nikki Listens Tour, where we sat down and really listened to the people of our state, breaking apart our demographics, coming to the Cuban community, the Venezuelan community, the Puerto Rican, the Haitian, the Black community, the seniors, you name it. And we sat and said, okay, what is on your mind? What are the things that are impacting you? And so every part of our platform that we have put together comes from the people. This isn't me saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is, hey, I'm a public servant. And if I'm going to be a public servant, then I got to be able to know what the public is feeling. And so everything that we talk about isn't my perspective on things. It's from things that I heard on the ground.
That is phenomenal, because as I'm looking at your tagline for your campaign, it's something new, someone new. And, I think that, and Nicole, you can jump in here because we're all kind of students of our own local political atmosphere. Tallahassee, Leon County is different from a lot of different counties throughout Florida. It's a red state, right? And you kind of have to have on purple socks to be able to walk these streets and to manage yourself. You spoke in some of your information with Florida being 25 years under Republican-controlled leadership. What does that look like for a Democrat, progressive-leaning governorship? What does that look like?
It's interesting. If you kind of go back in the history of those past 25 years, so we've had one party control, that was under, Governor Bush, and then, Republican Charlie Crist, and then it was Rick, and now it's Ron, and we've had a Republican legislature. But what's interesting, if you go back through all of those years, look at the ballot initiatives. Look at how many ballot initiatives have ended up on the ballot that have passed by overwhelming numbers. That is everything from class size amendment to even dealing with environmental issues, to restoration of civil rights, to medical marijuana, to $15 minimum wage. All of those are progressive in nature, and they pass by over 60%, some of them by 70%. So if you kind of take a look back and say, wait a second, if these issues are passing by such overwhelming numbers, it means that the people agree with the, like I said, quote unquote, progressive agenda. The issue is the people that are running for office, and making sure that we are finding candidates that speak about those issues, that transcend partisan politics, and understanding that we as Democrats have been running our campaigns awful, like awful, both on the local level, the statewide level, that we don't communicate with each other. There is no messaging coordination. The Senate victory and House victory doesn't talk to the party, doesn't talk to our local candidates. When you're running executive tickets like we did in 2018, when you're running, all of us, everybody ran their own campaign. My campaign was siloed off from Andrews and from the AG and the CFO races. So there's no collective message. Republicans don't do that. Republicans coordinate. They speak the same language. They talk the same talk. And so what the Republicans have to offer. Democrats, we like to always think that we're the smartest people in the room, and we talk it to death. And so so we've got an issue on messaging, and I see it differently.
Woo!
What you see is what you get. Like, yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat the problems.
I'm snapping for you. I'm snapping.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, definitely appreciate that response. But I want to ask you something just a little bit deeper as it relates to you. What sense of purpose, mission, duty guides you in your life, Ms. Free?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question, because that's a really important question that you should be asking for every elected official. Why do you do what you do? And if it's to have your name in lights and to be part of those ribbon cutting ceremonies, this is hard. Running for office is really hard. And so I go back to my fundamental principles that I was taught very early in life. And I come from the Jewish faith, and my faith teaches me what's called tikkun olam, to heal the world. And so when I was at a very young age, I was doing soup kitchens and Habitat for Humanity and volunteering and starting what we called Impact Theater when I was in high school, which was a traveling group that brought diverse voices. And this is back in 1995. We had this traveling group where we put together vignettes that we went into Black churches and we went into mosques and we went into the schools, and we started tackling some of those interracial marriage and couples, workforce harassment. So the things that motivate me is that every single day I wake up and I say, what can I do to make the world a better place? How can I make sure that I'm helping people that may have not had a seat at the table, or people that just maybe this month need an extra hand to get through a tough time? That's just who I am. That's who I have always been, regardless of a title, regardless of a position. I always have been taught you have an obligation to give back.
So asking this question, so with an issue that may not be in alignment with your personal values or your political values, but it's consensus supported and driven, are you prepared to support that type of policy or that type of decision, even if it's totally against what you're about, what you understand?
Look, I'm a servant of the people. I'm not running on, obviously I've got my own convictions and I've got my own beliefs. But at the end of the day, if the people are wanting something different and are wanting, a policy perspective to be pushed through, obviously I need to see where they're coming from to make sure that their heart is in the right place, that it's not politically motivated just for, a win at the ballot box, but it's actually something that needs to be shifted. And I'll give this pure example. I graduated from Miami Palmetto Senior High, so I'm public educated, and so I'm sure everybody across the country has heard about Palmetto recently, as our newest Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, also graduated from Palmetto. My mom was a teacher. I went to public education. I represented Broward School Board, and so I am a diehard public education person. But as I heard more and more stories of, the onset of choice and the onset of some of the charter schools and what is happening in our education system, I had to take a step back and say, okay, well, explain to me let's make sure that we are not taking money away from our public schools, which unfortunately that's what's been happening, which is why our public education system is severely underfunded. But let's make sure that we're doing it right and that they're keeping the same standards that you would have in a traditional public school. But I'm open for it because I was hearing stories of parents telling me, look, I was in a community where I had an F school and there wasn't resources there. So I had to put my kid in a charter school. Or, my kid has special needs that they weren't fitting into a traditional public school environment. And so while I'm a staunch supporter of our public education, and I will always be, I was open to understanding why we have schools of choice and why that was something that may need to be balanced better in our state. But I understand where we're coming from.
Wow,
That was good.
Yeah, let me just inject because I think one of the things that just really resonated with me just a few minutes ago, just hearing you say, a strong advocate for public schools, but yet you begin to hear the issues that your neighbors were having. You begin to hear the issues and the concerns of others. So it made you sit down and then take a deeper look at it. And I think that is very, very important for a candidate that's looking to become the next governor of Florida, because there are so many issues now that are being unheard.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think too, on just on that, I'm sorry, I think that too is the recognition, that our state is purple. While we have had Republicans controlling, the executive and legislative branch, and unfortunately, not to put partisan into it, but the judicial branch now, that you have to take a step back and say, okay, that if we are purple, that means that 50% or 49% of the state feels one way on an issue, and 49% of the state feels another way on the issue. How do we find that balance? And I think that what's happened over 28 years is that we haven't created that balance. That it's been all or nothing, and you haven't had those other voices speak up and be heard on some of those other issues.
That's so good. And Nicole, you may have some additional to add to this question. I think that we have gotten, and that's why it really resonates, someone new, because when you talk about the way that reactive politics operate, right? And I call it reactive because we're always, coming back, trying to regain ground as opposed to being proactively moving forward. Nicole said earlier, which was very cool, that movement ain't always progress, right? And then I added that progress is subjective, right? Because there are some people over here on this side that thinks progress is this, and people over here that thinks progress is this. But we haven't had a climate where there was a person that was win-win minded, right? So we can make sure that we go after resources to make sure our schools are properly funded. We can work with school districts to interpret their values, support their leadership in a way that brings that positive energy that we need as we raise the educational standards of our children, yet still make accommodation for alternatives, right, for the children, for the communities through school choice, if that is something that's being opted into. That win-win mentality has not been there. Has that been your experience in government service?
Yeah, and that's also why I first ran in 2018. I got frustrated. I got very frustrated with watching what was happening in Tallahassee. There was not a lot of compromise. I saw what was happening to Democrats when they came to the table with ideas and suggestions to soften a piece of legislation or to put, additional parameters into a legislation. And there was no compromise. I mean, I saw speakers of the House more so compromise in the Senate, which doesn't exist now, but at least it did, during my time up in Tallahassee. But the House was so locked down that if you weren't part of senior leadership, and that's still how it is today, there was no compromise. Democrats did not have a seat at the table. Their bills were not being heard and being passed, even if it was a fantastic idea that wasn't or should never have been partisan. But the Republicans didn't want Democrats to get a win. And who hurts at that point? The people. The people hurt. It's not that elected official. That Democrat is probably in a safe seat. They're going to win again. That's not an issue. But the people who hurt are the people that get hurt are the people on the ground that aren't going to see change because of partisan politics of Tallahassee.
So how do you change the heart and the minds of the legislators in order to avoid, this very thing that you're talking about?
It's not going to be easy, and I'm not going to say otherwise. But I also know a lot of them because I remember I was a government consultant for 8 years. I represented, again, foster care kids. I represented public schools, and I represented the expansion of medical marijuana companies and access to marijuana patients. And I know these guys, and they have become so radicalized since 2016. And they aren't in their hearts, maybe some of them. Let me take out, some of them are probably, they're now allowed to show their true colors. But most of them are not like that, because I know even after I got elected that I'd walk onto the House, the Senate floor, and I'd say hi to the Democrats first because they were always in the back of the room. And then I would walk to the front and I would get the hugs from Republican colleagues. I know some of them. I mean, some of them have come to me privately and said, listen, we support you. Thank you for standing up, especially during the pandemic when some of them were scared of what was happening to their families and to their own communities. And so I know that there is a lot of really good people in these chambers that, as I keep saying, when you cut off the head of the snake dies. When you cut Ron DeSantis out of this conversation, and when we win in November, we can go back and be like, look, your legislative agendas is why I am here. Let's work together to fix these things, because obviously this didn't work. And so I think that start having those very frank relationship building conversations one-on-one with leadership, rank and file members. My hope is that we start to de-escalate the tension in the chambers, and then we can start working together on some of these issues that have really been plaguing our state.
Nikki, you said in your information that Florida works well for a few people at the top of the economic ladder, but for everyone else, the system is broken.
Yep.
You speak to that statement.
Yep. Look, as we have heard from our current governor, he keeps saying how great our economy is. How great our economy is. Look how much money we're bringing into the state. Look at how great this is. And you talk to everyday people, the people that are working in our service industries, the people that are working 2 jobs just to barely make ends meet, to that single mom who's seeing her rent increasing by 60%, to the people that can't afford their property insurance. And you talk to those people, they don't feel that. And so as the Republicans have spent so much time trying to bring more and more people into our state, they're bringing the people in at the top of the economic ladder. And they're bringing people in, which is why we have a housing crisis right now, one of the reasons. And they come in with cash that they're either selling their properties in New York or California, and they're buying at the high end, and then they're squeezing down the rest of the people of our state. Some people that have been living here for generations, that have been working here. And now they see all this private and out-of-state investment money and foreign money in some instances coming into the state. They're being welcomed by the open arms. You have, you look into so many of our communities that have, failing schools. The money isn't going there. If you happen to live in an affluent community, we all know this, their schools are better. You go into Liberty City, or you go into other parts of our state that are more minority, those schools are not at the same par as those others. And so we're starting at the very bottom, at the very basics of education, that we're not seeing the same economic opportunities at the very beginning of the ladder. Mm-hmm. And these are real things that are impacting the entire trajectory of somebody's life. If you can't get a good education at the front end of your life, then your trajectory is stipend.
Man.
Well said. So I want to get to maybe the top 5 issues that you believe Florida has, and maybe your solutions around those.
Yep. First is that affordability. That is number one. The fact that people can't afford their rent, they can't afford their mortgages, they can't afford property insurance, they can't afford, the bare basics. We see, even during the pandemic and even still after, the lines at the food banks. We have 3.5 million Floridians that are food insecure, and over 1.2 of those are our children. We are living in the 3rd largest state in the nation, 3rd largest GDP, and we've got 3.5 million Floridians that don't know where their next meal comes from. We have been working really hard inside the Department of Agriculture to fix this and to bring heightened awareness to the situation, asking for additional funding. I put together an amazing task force that we first opened beginning part of 2020. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, everything got kind of put on hold on this, but they came out last year and they spent so much time and energy going into solutions of how to get around this food insecurity issue. Everything from, our SNAP issues to our seniors to food waste, the food insecurity. And what I was so excited from is that they didn't just present problems, that this entire package they put together had solutions to each of those problems. And so I'm excited to now take that with me to the governor's office and say, here we've got solutions of how to deal with these situations. And here's where legislation needs to come. So that's just on the food insecurity aspect, but the generality of affordability. Day one, I'm announcing a state of emergency for housing because that's what it is. This way, we can start putting money back into building more affordable homes because we know that the Affordable Trust Fund has been gutted for the last 25 years in the tune of $2.4 billion. Each one of those Republican governors, Jeb, Charlie, Rick, and Ron, all gutted it. And so we've had less affordable homes and workforce housing being built. That's a major problem.
Right there. That's it. So both Christine and I have housing backgrounds, and that Sadowski fund. We fought on the Capitol steps. So you got me on that one.
Yep.
Use the dedicated fund for housing. Period.
Correct. Period. I will never sign a budget that touches the Sadowski. And so giving me a state of emergency, I get to take some of that $20 billion that's sitting in reserves and start to replenish that and start building more homes. Then when you start building more homes, you start to have more supply, which means more people who are in the rental markets can now purchase homes. And now you also ease the rental market as well, because there won't be as much demand. That's one. Two is education. I have committed to doubling in my 4 years per pupil funding. That right now we're sitting at $6,900. Back in 2006, it was $6,400. With inflation, that should be well over. And I'm not even talking about today's inflation. I'm just talking about inflation of the last, almost 15 plus years, that we should be over $10,000 per pupil funding. So that has to be doubled in this administration. The third is healthcare. And I'm going to couple a couple things in healthcare. One, Medicaid expansion has to happen. That is a number, priority to start rolling up our sleeves and getting that done. Also in that healthcare situation is also the disparities in our communities of color on access to the healthcare system. And things that I've started to hear on the campaign trail, and excuse me for my ignorance on this issue, and I can't believe that I'm just hearing about this on the campaign trail, that so many in our medical profession aren't being trained of how to deal with Black bodies. And hearing from so many of our women saying that when they're in labor, that the doctors are telling them you can deal with the pain, and not understanding what happens, and not being able to focus some of that attention on the differences. And so we got to talk about that healthcare system on that aspect. And then, of course, women's reproductive healthcare. And so those on the healthcare side. And, we can throw in there the environment, which, again, we have not had well-funding resources in the environment, and also looking at the inequities in when it comes to discrimination in the environment and how that is impacting our Black and brown communities different than everybody else. And then I think even when we're talking about the unaffordability on this is the true conversation that I have all the time, that too many white electeds and too many white politicians come to the Black community asking for their vote and asking for their vote and asking for their vote. And all they talk about is criminal justice reform, and all they talk about is gun violence, and don't go to the actual issues at hand, which is economics and generational wealth. That if we are going to get past any of these other issues, then we got to go to the heart and soul of what these problems stem from. And that's economic opportunities and being able to truly invest in our communities and give our small businesses opportunities, making sure that we're providing access for home ownership, which again helps create that generational wealth. So there's a lot. You asked for just a few, but that's kind of nut and shell.
Well, I feel like Nikki's been tuning in to some previous conversations.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody prepared her to sit here and talk with us today. repeated probably about 10, and we don't have a lot of time. It's oh my goodness. We oh my gosh. We don't have a lot of time, but I do want to just restate for the audience here that first of all, you are currently our agriculture and consumer services commissioner. You are already in state government. The significance of that office. Can you really kind of, in like a minute, just speak to the significance of that office and how it informs your ability to serve in the office?
First of all, it's one of 4 members of the Florida cabinet. So one of our constitutional officers was elected in 2018. We oversee $1.9 billion budget. That's from federal dollars as well as state dollars. 4,600 employees all over the state. 19 different divisions. So it's not just agriculture, which is our number 2 economic driver. We've got 47,000 working farms and ranches in our state. Most people won't know that. But it also is all of our consumer services. That is Friday the gas pump. That is our fair rides. That's our nonprofits, our security guards. I have the concealed weapons programming, so all of our gun licensing. We have the Office of Energy. We deal with forest fires, so forestry, agriculture law enforcement. It is a mini governor's office, and we run it with like we run it into perfection as much as we can. We service people all over the state on consumer complaints, landlord-tenant issues, basically any consumer issue, weights and measures. So if you go to the airport and you have to weigh your bag, you look on the side of that scale, you'll see our sticker on there. Obviously, you see at the gas pumps, making sure that you're getting exactly what you've asked for. It is a very robust position, and it is something that most people in our state don't know. And then again, member of the cabinet, member of the clemency board of trustees for the state. It is a tremendously large responsibility, and like I said, mini governor's office. So I am ready to become governor on day 1.
Wow.
Nikki, go ahead and tell the folks how they can engage with your campaign.
Well, we've got, I'm very robust on social media, my Twitter, and we've got TikTok. I'm doing TikTok live tomorrow. So anybody wants to tune in tomorrow night. But we go to our website, nikkifried.com. That's NIKKIFRIED. You will see all of our contact information, how to follow us on our social media. If you want to volunteer, there's a place for that. If you happen to want to give up your Starbucks tomorrow morning and give some money instead to the campaign, there's places for that. But we definitely pride ourselves on being accessible. I check my social media way too often for my team. I respond to people's DMs because I'm not a career politician. I want to hear from the people and be able to govern accordingly.
Wow. Well, certainly I want to thank you for joining these 2 wonderful ladies that co-hosted this amazing show. Nicole, a conversation with Nicole. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. And Christy, thank you so much for co-hosting. And Nikki, I just thought it would be amazing if I would just sit back today and let 2 amazing voices that are constantly here, our community is hearing from, just really, interview you today, because they said this is the year of the woman.
Yep.
Hey, I heard it was a decade.
Right. It is a year of the woman to make sure that the future is female.
Oh,
right. Love it.
Well, certainly to all of those who are listening to us, listen, make sure you follow Nikki Fried, candidate for governor, and to the 15,000. There's a young lady who said this, and I want to make sure that I give her a shout out. That's Patricia Sykes. She said, Nikki, that's good talk, and that's true. So whenever people can resonate and hear truth and understand the talk that is being said, it means so much, because as they would say on church, what from the heart does what? Reaches the heart again. So you've touched a lot of hearts today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the top.
Absolutely. And don't forget, everybody, August 23rd is the primary.
That's
so
right.
Let's make sure everybody's voting in the primary, and then hopefully I'll be able to come back on the show in the general election as our Democratic nominee.
We will make sure you fulfill that promise. Absolutely.
No, enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for allowing me to be here, and Commissioner Fried, all the best to you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Be blessed.
All right. Absolutely. Hey, I want to say good afternoon, and we're closing out Greg James Community Show. It's been amazing with conversation with Nicole and our conscience check chick, Christy Henry. Until final words.
This was great.
This was great.
It was awesome. Thank you.
We got to do it more. As a matter of fact, Nicole, we're going to invite you back next week because we're going to have our own candidate roundup.
It's called roll call.
It's called roll call, and we're going to give everybody elevator speech, and we're going to make our points, our pros and cons. We'll do everything but house seat date. How about that? All right. Until then, listen, y'all have a wonderful week. Don't forget, early voting starts on the 13th. Get out, make your vote heard. Until then, this is Greg James saying, have a wonderful day.